And nice to see, Jeff, that Mark has said hello to you. An ex-Vega Group colleague
Hi,
said
Mike.
hello
How
to
are
you.
you? Yeah, haven't spoken for ages.
So I'm
Get together with your old
delighted.
friends.
Yes, and I'll get together. So delighted to be able to welcome Ella Richardson and Jeff Bloom from GP Strategies. And the session today, Promise to Practice, who is doing what with AI. Really looking forward to this one. I've seen the slides. I'm ahead of the game, so this is cool. Do I get to see what you're about to enjoy? So I'll hand over to you two guys.
Thanks so much, Andrew. Andrew, as Andrew said, it's been a hot topic, so we're honoured to be with you to share some of our learning and insight on the status of AI. Jeff, do you want to say hi first?
Yeah, hi, Jeff Bloom. I know a few of you on the call. Good to see you. Thank you. Very, very pleased to be here to talk about AI and listen about AI as well, because we've been through quite a few waves of technology and learning, going from mainframe, for those who are old enough, going from mainframe to PC to internet to mobile phones to LMSs and LXPs and LRSs and so on. And so it feels like more of the same, really. It's never stopped, does it? But I've worked in learning and development for about 40 years, and as I know some of you on the call, so very pleased to be here, but also very excited to be involved in understanding how AI is contributing and has the potential to contribute in learning.
Great. And I'm Ella, so I'm part of the Learning Experience Division of GP Strategies alongside Jeff. I head up the Learning Experience Design and Consulting arm of the business. So having been with the business in various guises for 13 years, previously with Leo and Learning Technologies Group, I'm excited to be here really because my thrill comes from navigating the potential of new technologies like this and working with Jeff to build expertise in the group and activate it across some of the 1,400 odd organisations that we work with at GP Strategies. Just in case you're not familiar with us, as GP we run the gamut of learning and talent solutions. We've grown some deep expertise in a variety of areas that you can see here, all with the purpose of enabling people and organisations to perform at their highest potential. So we operate across all of these specialisms that you can see here, but Jeff and I are going to focus particularly on the AI capability, our consulting and design today. So we are going to take a look at how to map all of the opportunities that AI can afford us. We've got some examples of our consulting work in this space to show you soon. We're also going to look at where it's working, where it's working really well, and where, in all honesty, I think AI has a little bit of a way to go, so that hopefully we can help you avoid some of the pitfalls. We're also going to have a look at what's both practical and eminently achievable today, plus how you can manage some expectations for what isn't, but also looking at what's realistic longer term, even if it might not be happening today, so that you can think about how to get prepared and kind of lay the rails for that. So please ask questions, tell us what you think, challenge us and each other, because I'm sure there is a lot of expertise in this virtual room way besides us, and we're really keen to learn from you too today.
Sorry to jump in, guys. We've had a lot of comments about your microphone, Ella. I'm not sure that we can do too much with it. Can you try moving it away from your mouth a bit? I know we had problems with the sibilance and stuff earlier on. Can we try and move it away a little bit? Some people are finding it very fuzzy and difficult to listen to.
Okay, is that any better now?
No, it's still no. It's better
No?
now, and I'm getting people in the text going no. And the problem is it's a sibilance issue. We've had this issue. We had it with Jeff, didn't we, earlier in the week, and now it's
Oh, it was
coming through
okay
from
earlier.
yours. Yeah,
Okay, let me...
maybe if we try detaching your headset, perhaps.
While you try that,
Try it
Ella,
with the
just to
set
check,
mic.
are you guys hearing me okay? Just to make sure that's a bit clearer. Yeah.
Yeah, all good, Jeff. All good.
Okay, well, I'll do the next bit then. So one of the things that we are very acutely aware of is the breadth and the depth and the variety of AI and what it can do. So during the session, we're going to ask a few things of you, because whatever we're seeing, you're probably seeing some of the same things and some different things as well. So we just started off with a very sort of high level question, really. Because we've certainly come across clients that aren't allowed to use AI at all. And other clients that are experimenting and so on, as you can see on this question. So we'll give you a bit of chance to answer.
Really interesting. As soon as I open a poll, immediately people start clicking. I'm loving the response. We've had so many replies already. 200 people in the room, and about half of you, or just under, a third of you have been responding. So, which of the following are you doing in workplace learning? And there are 4 options there. So, experimenting with public AI. You've access to specific licensed tools and you have a policy in place. You haven't started yet, or you're not allowed. That's the 4 options that have been put up there. Please do let us know your results. Thank you, Ella. Thank you. So, experimenting with public AI, access to specific licensed tools, haven't started yet, or not allowed. I'll close the poll in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now. And the poll is closed. So let's have a look at the results there. Interesting comment from Yana. It's a bit of a mix for us. We use free ones under a policy, but go through an approval process for use with sensitive data. So interesting to take that into account. What are your thoughts, Jeff and Ella, on the results we've had from this poll?
Well, it's very interesting. I ran a similar poll with a different group about 3 months ago, and it looks to me, I mean, obviously it's a different group, you can't tell too much from that, but it looks to me as though things have moved on quite a lot, particularly in respect of having access to specific license tools and having a policy in place. And it looks like maybe about the same number of people are exploring and experimenting with it. I forgot to ask the question about we're not allowed before, and the only reason I put that one in there is because I've subsequently come across people that just aren't allowed. I can also see that there's some people who haven't started yet. So as we know with AI, it's moving quite fast, and this is sort of in what I've seen before is substantiating that actually. So and I can see in the chat that there's some other comments in terms of people who perhaps haven't asked for it yet, or people who can't use anything that's cloud-based. So that's understandable. There's some people that are very sensitive about IPR, and some of those are resistant to using it at the moment as well. So yeah, interesting to see how things are moving. And we've got a couple of other questions like this, so we can compare notes with each other. I'll just skip on a little bit. It does seem to be at my end.
That's the audience. The audience say yes. So yeah, there we go. Much better. Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much,
guys.
Thank you very much, Ella, and well done for kind of moving fast. So when we're talking about AI, I think it is a very diverse cake. So and we're very much focusing on AI in learning in this session because obviously AI is used for lots of other things. So, for example, it's used for image recognition in cancer diagnosis. It's used for controlling through sort of navigation and sat nav systems, and lots of other ways, including contact centers and so on. So we're just focusing in on learning, but even within learning, there's lots of different things that we can, and we're seeing people either use it for or anticipating using it for things. So Ella, you might you might want to talk to this one and just check your mic's still working.
Yeah, and look, as we were putting this together, we're in recognition there are a vast number of tools in the market. There's an absolute plethora of, and it's evolving all the time. We've been interested in how we can evaluate the value of different kinds of AI in the learning context. So from the large language models and content generation through to images, audio, video, chatbots, everything you can see here, translation. Some of these we're going to explore a bit later, in terms of content design. But you may have used productivity tools. Some AI, like Jeff was saying, has been around for ages. I mean, I've been using things like Grammarly for years, and we have AI well embedded into the workflow. But also, there's opportunities to kind of capitalize on emerging technologies for everything from data analysis to sharpening up presentations. And then there are some of the more experimental tools and use cases emerging in the market. So from smart coaching applications, I mean, actually yesterday I read a report which was nominally on the experience of Gen Z in the workplace, and it was saying that young people are feeling that they're receiving more effective feedback from AI tools, which, having seen, I've recently had a report that Copilot gave me on my performance in meetings, I can absolutely see why that's the case and where there are, incredible coaching applications in the flow of work. There's also, cognitive profiling, so moving well beyond I affectionately call them corporate horoscopes of personality testing, through to sentiment analysis, personalization. And then a big one, here for me, you may be familiar, I think at the end of 2023, PwC was fined, I think it's about $7 million after a regulator found that a number of audit staff were sharing answers on internal training exams. And I think, it's these kinds of situations where things like facial recognition and biometrics could be very useful in future as part of wider learning and performance strategies. Something like that, you could see in the use of online proctoring could really help to show, I am me and no, I'm not cheating. So, lots of potential use cases in the more experimental side. Anything else you'd add there?
Well, just to sort of take it on a little bit further, really, because there's tools that are available, and we've probably seen a lot of these tools at Learning Technologies, for example, but it's what you do with the tools as well. And so one of the areas that we look at is where are some of the opportunities in learning. And so we've sort of categorised that into 4 different segments, really. One is around improving learning administration, understanding the portfolio of content that you deliver and who it's suitable for, that type of thing, maybe providing people with routes through that content. Design and delivery, so in other words, kind of gaining possible creativity or productivity on things that we do already. Maybe giving a scope to augment what we do already and provide things that we aren't normally able to do for budgetary reasons or capability reasons or time reasons. And then the other thing is the sort of thing you were talking about just now, Anna, really, where you've got AI for use for things like coaching, where there's new opportunities being created as well. And just to sort of and some of these tools can be used in all of these areas or some of these areas. So, for example, in administration and portfolio management, we're seeing things like large language models being used for skills analysis, capability mapping, content analysis, and so on, and LMSs including AI in order to do things like generate sort of data analytics and in order to automate administration and things like that. And then in design and delivery, we're seeing things like AI being used for supporting testing and QA, but also particularly in the learning design process. And we'll pick an example and a story from each of these areas. And just because of time, really, just to sort of illustrate some of the things that we're seeing, and also where we're seeing things work reliably, and also where they're coming up with challenges. Interesting question, Andrew. I'll just jump into the other ones as well. I would say that we're doing something in all of these areas, and we're also seeing clients do stuff in all of these areas. Where we're probably getting most interest at the moment is in administration and portfolio management, particularly around sort of skills analysis and mapping to content in order to identify content gaps and content waste. But also in design and delivery, where we're looking at ways of gaining productivity efficiencies in content design and things like that. And then sometimes, we're also doing some quite interesting stuff in the group around the sort of coaching environment as well. We'll talk about each of these and give some examples, but spread across all 4 really, Andrew. So that's a different way of looking at it. Not so much the tools that are available, but some of the things you can do with those tools. And actually, one of the things that we do with our clients, for some of our clients, is we explore which of those things they might even consider doing. And this is deliberately unreadable, as you'd expect, but it's basically a consolidated output from some of the workshops we've run for our clients, where we've brainstormed with them and they come up with ideas of how they are either already using AI in supporting these activities or the ways that they'd potentially like to. And you can see there's an awful lot of things that people might want to do or indeed are doing. And so what we also do, and this is something that you might find quite helpful, is that we we also look at what they've got the capacity to do, really, either in terms of the tools they've got available to them, or alternatively in terms of the capability or the appetite or the budgets to do stuff with. So this is an example of areas where this particular organisation, it's an amalgam, can and have the interest and the appetite and the tools to be able to do things like skills gap analysis, skills profiling, and translation, whereas they don't particularly have the tools to do something around coaching and support, and they are. And it's less feasible for them to do stuff around personalisation, but they've got high appetite for that. And then they're less sure about and nervous, and perhaps more nervous about using synthetic media. So, and this is something that we recognise, is that every organisation is different, and we saw that in that first survey. Some organisations aren't allowed to use it at all. So this is quite a nice little framework to sort of say, what could we be doing, what should we be doing, and how can we go about doing it?
Yeah, I think what I like is, it's often what could we do to what can and will we do. It's helping to just direct organisations, and we spend time with them looking at this to refine that prioritisation into what has the greatest impact, or what could be actioned quickly, and what is on the roadmap that might need more funding, more thinking. So yeah,
and it's one of the ways that we start to boil the ocean.
So we wanted to get into a bit more of understanding what you're doing. We know certainly some of the most popular areas of opportunity we are asked about are in content design. So we wanted to understand, what are you doing in this area, content design and creation? Are you actively using AI to design? Maybe is it to generate assessments, to create audio, video, or imagery? And we've put some suggested options up here, like using AI in coaching to improve the curriculum, skills mapping. But tell us in the chat if you're doing anything else that we haven't listed here.
This is a multi-choice, everybody, as well. So if you're doing more than one thing, you can click on more than one thing, which gives us a good sense of how people are using it. And some good questions as well, by the way. Thank you for your questions. There's a couple of really good questions come through as well. So thank you for those. We'll pick those questions up after. But yeah, which of the following are you doing in terms of workplace learning? And if you are doing something else, tell us in the chat. I can see a few people are typing. JJ says using AI for session plans, schemes of work, AI voiceovers, and some video content. Thanks, JJ.
When we
I can see other people still typing.
When we see the results of this one of the ones that's sort of not particularly called out on this slide actually is, what are you doing in learning content design and creation? So some people might have sort of put that under AI to analyse and improve the curriculum. When we see the results of this one, Andrew, it might be quite nice to put up that other poll as well, because that hones in on something I know we're all very interested in terms of how we can use it for content design and production.
Absolutely. I'll give people a few more seconds, and I can see there's still people typing in the chat.
Translation. It's another, pretty good use case.
Yeah. I'm going to close the poll in 3, 2, 1. I will leave the chat open though, but there we go. So let's have a look and see where people are using it. And interesting to see the just looking and see the two highest are analysing, improving the curriculum, and defining learning journeys.
Yeah. I'm also really liking Lee, about integrating it into engagement surveys and 360 feedback to give directional coaching. Sounds like a really brilliant work.
Yeah, and thanks for...
And interesting, Yvonne.
Sorry, and also, Valerie, and there's a few of you who are saying that you're using it for video content creation and synthetic media creation. And actually, that's one of the items that's on the other poll that's a little bit more focused in on design and creation. So,
So interesting. So Lee integrating it into engagement surveys and feedback. We've got Yvonne using a VR headset. Laura talking about relying on vendors and partners to be using AI as we outsource a lot. And it is interesting. Obviously, as a vendor yourselves, we can see we've got relevant, it's obviously you're talking about, but just seeing how vendors are using it is interesting. Video creation, says Yana. Scenario skills practice, says Fran, and Fran's also content learning design. Yvonne shared with colleagues a Copilot for creating quiz questions. Yeah, a really interesting way of doing these things. And then on the right hand side, AI avatars, says Heather. We'll be talking about some of those as we go through. Interested in using AI for needs analysis, says JJ. And it's also similar. A comment came out as well to do with learning analytics, which I think is a question we will need to have a look at. Simon, a chatbot to answer questions about compliance. Brilliant use of it. Ella, you've got a thought on that?
Yes, and in fact, Simon, you might be interested in some of the examples that we've got later. I think it's, and as Fran says, I think there's real opportunity here to actually help put people in situations and really get them the information that they need when they need it. So whether that's through a chatbot, so they're able to ask questions just in time, or as Fran was saying about generating situations and scenarios, that give them opportunities to practice. Lots of opportunities there.
And the thing, so before we move on, the thing I would say to everybody is you don't have to worry about copying all of this. What you can do is you'll get the recording. You come back to the recording tomorrow and you look at it, and 24, 25 minutes in, come to this page and you will be able to see all of these ideas, because one of these, the benefit of these sessions is seeing all of the ideas that everybody else is doing. And you've got 15 or 20 different ways to be using this stuff. And that's the benefit of coming along to these sessions. So I'm going to close this screen down, so we'll go back to normal presenting screen. But remember, if there are things on here you think are a good idea, you can always pick them up in the recording.
Andrew, did you pop the results up? I didn't see them in my window, but you might have done.
Oh, sorry. What, the results from the poll that we've been doing now? Oh, this one. It should be there. It should have the votes in there. Actively using AI for data analytics. I've got 18 people. Using AI to analyse and improve our curriculum is 27 people.
That's great. I just wanted
Have you got those results?
Wanted to check that our audience could see them too. That was all.
Yeah. They are there. It's interesting that there is a good spread across. The skills mapping and matching is possibly the lowest one in there, and I think that might be partly to do with the fact that, well, are we putting in what we expect, which I think is interesting.
Excellent, thank you.
Well, let's jump into. Sorry, Jeff. I was just going to say, should we jump into some of our 4 use cases, because I think some of them touch on some of the experience some people have had, and then maybe we might touch on something that you may be less familiar with. We're going to share some stories around synthetic media content design, diving into and interrogating learning libraries, and some coaching mentoring examples. So first is synthetic media, an example of that augmentation of existing models. Andrew, I'll ask if you could just play this for us now.
Welcome to this demonstration on the use of synthetic video in training. You'll see how this innovative technology can transform employee learning experiences, making them more engaging.
I'll stop that, because I know some of you will be familiar with this, and this is just quite a basic example of video being produced. The reality is we can feed a requirement in and it will produce an output. So like with this example, you can select the style of voice and imagery, you can choose varied backgrounds and visual treatments, and you can have scripting support or have something modify a suggested script. So, a video might be relatively short, might be something like this, a couple of minutes long, but, Jeff, you were saying, these can just take 20 minutes to create, which is, quite incredible when you think of compared to, traditional moving image costs.
And I think the other thing is that, obviously, a lot of synthetic video at the moment is very much presenter-led. People can be creative in terms of mixing up presenters, and we've used it in introducing some scenarios and things like that. But one of the things that even though at the moment it's not really suited, in our experience anyway, to doing something like a sort of a high fidelity sort of drama-based video around behavioural learning. it's very easy to update and maintain. So if it's about a policy announcement or an introduction to a course and something changes, you can regenerate it very, very fast as well. So it's finding its place, and I expect its capabilities will continue to grow. We've tried doing things like having conversations between the presenters, and it's a bit stilted in that respect. But some of you on the call may have achieved better results with that.
I'll just pop another example here now and let it run for a minute.
You're joining a team, led by Kenneth, where you will meet two new colleagues, Salama and Ted, by video conference. When you log in, you see that Salama and Ted are deep in conversation and haven't noticed you.
Wow. Your daughter's a teenager now.
I know.
We were both in the San Francisco office when she was born.
I'll pause it here because I think, you know, what we just really wanted to show here was an example of how it's moving on and how you can step it up. So in this case, it's introducing a scenario, and this is it's a slightly more advanced paid example. So you can generate more of the kind of background scenery, B-roll, and produce more content. As Jeff said, you know, I think the technology is moving fast. I think if you've been familiar with this kind of these tools and technology in the last year, they've come on quite far. And, you know, having seen, you know, examples of deep fakes recently, you'll see how it's moving incredibly fast and getting better all the time. Now,
yeah, just jump in there with a very specific example. We find that one of the reasons it's not terribly naturalistic is because we chat over each other, as I just did, and and we respond to each other's conversations, and we use more gestures, and we bicker and we joke, and the naturalistic conversation with actors tends to be more convincing, and even if it's scripted. So there's an artificiality still to it, and as you say, it's continually improving.
It's obviously not the same as having a bona fide person. I think, you know, and these examples demonstrate you still have a little of the uncanny valley about this. That's the psychological phenomenon where it can cause a kind of feeling of unease, where you think something's human-like but not quite realistic. But having said that, you know, one of the reasons we wanted to show this is, you know, as we've seen from some of the chat here, you know, some people are using these kinds of tools already, but they're a really easy, quick get up and go. There are some real benefits to being able to create, you know, multiple versions of moving image or media at the touch of a button. We can expedite translation, for example, and, you know, if you're working to a budget, not having expensive reshoot costs for something like a video if anything changes can be enormously helpful. So just a little snapshot, but there are lots of tools available in, you know, the video and animation space. So Colossian and Synthesia, I think we would consider some of the most common for video production, and something like Beyond is really popular for basic animations. We're also seeing increasing use of AI audio tools. So I haven't seen anyone mention this in the chat yet, but you know, products like 11 Labs, Wellsaid, Murph AI, and Amazon Polly. We're not showing an example because obviously it's the same kind of thing, but audio only. You know, for where you need narration, for where you are producing, you know, podcast type assets, these can be useful. And some of these tools actually offer cloning from a human source, so you can pick that person and generate audio using their voice. Obviously the advantages are quite similar to video, but it can also be really great for accessibility. So, for example, having automated transcripts can save, you know, vast amounts of manual labour. I guess I would say, you know, as you're probably inferring, there are obviously some ethical concerns with synthetic media, particularly if you're using something like a human source, just related to that potential for misuse and, you know, authenticity. Any other comments from you, Jeff? We haven't.
I think it was Inga who was talking about 87% of people preferring a human being in their training, and at the moment, and you mentioned the was it Unhappy Valley, the effect of it not feeling.
Uncanny Valley.
uncanny valley, not unhappy valley, feeling slightly disconcerting. And I think you're right. It's where we're seeing most use of this is in sort of supplementary, introductory. If we've got a minor character in a scenario or something, we might drop in a synthetic character, but not for a main character or for a drama, a drama production or something like that. So it's definitely got its place, and some of our clients are using it quite a lot. But also, it can become quite recognisable, and depending upon the tool you're using, the characters might start to reappear. And you mentioned 11 Labs, where you can take an existing person's or character's voice and process that quite nicely. So. Sorry, that uncanny valley. Should we move on to the next example? We'll keep an eye on the questions, by the way, and definitely, Lucy, we're going to come back to talk about some of the challenges around not just compliance but also ethics and use of AI. So one of the things that we are doing with some of our clients, and definitely doing a lot of internally, is to use large language models to help with learning design, and to also help with content analysis. So one of the challenges that we've identified, and I think some of you alluded to this in the chat, is around the challenge of IPR and AI. And if you're extracting content from the internet, whether it's using ChatGPT or whether it's using Copilot, there's a real risk, of course, that you might use lowest common denominator, unreliable, inaccurate, and sometimes false content. Alternatively, you might use somebody else's content, and I know most of the people on this call would be nervous about that. So we've got a tool that uses a large language model. We called it Content AIQ, and I just want to sort of bring this up as an example, and I can show this one because it's our example of how you can sort of keep content under control and also control the quality of your inputs. So this tool allows us to upload a range of learning formats, and in particular, actually, we're able to upload and interrogate some SCOs. So, for example, Storyline and Rise and Gomo as some examples. And what this does is allows us to interrogate the content. So if we're uploading something like a whole load of SOPs or some product manuals or product knowledge or something like that, we can interrogate that content behind a firewall with no risk of that content being available and accidentally shared out on the wider internet. We're achieving some really interesting results with this, and actually we're also gaining some understanding of when it works really, really well and when it doesn't work really, really well. And somebody earlier on was talking about being able to generate a quiz or an assessment using AI, and it can be very good at doing that sort of thing. However, what we're finding is that it's particularly good at doing that where the content is sort of knowledge-based, fact-based, that type of thing, but actually it's not quite so good yet at generating scenario-based questions and things where there's more nuance and interpretation required. So we bring in various different types of content, we deconstruct it, and we're able to interrogate it. And the other thing that we're also trying to do is to produce some reliability. So this allows you to do the same sort of open prompting, prompt chaining, and prompt engineering that you can do on things like ChatGPT. But what we're trying to do is to capture some of the best outputs of that in the form of, we call them agents, but effectively they're sort of tried and tested prompt sequences, so that when we first started to generate multiple choice questions, we had quite a lot of problems with AI not coming up with very good distractors. AI sometimes lies to you, but it inherently doesn't like lying. And of course, a distractor is a form of plausible lie. But what we've also found is that there's ways that we can improve the way that we prompt in order to get better results and more reliable results. And
I just think that it's a really interesting learning from here. That the tool is a tool, but actually it's about how you use it, and seeing some of the how Jeff and team are developing agents to actually support the prompting, so that we can get to refined question options, and by helping the tool become more self-critical in a way.
Yeah, and we're combining that with the ability to do open prompting as well. So, for example, if I said, I'd like to write a poem about this content because it seems like a good idea, then we obviously haven't created an agent for that. You can also do the same sort of open prompting that you can do with ChatGPT and Copilot and so on. And actually, the tool point behind me on the door, I'll come back to this in a little bit later as well. I've got a handsaw, Spear and Jackson, good old-fashioned handsaw, and I think that one of the things that generative AI, it kind of turns my handsaw into a power saw. But actually, I can probably do more damage faster with a power saw and more things wrong more quickly than I can with a handsaw. And there's also certain things I can't do with a power saw. We very, very, very firmly of the view that all of this needs to be overseen, in control of, and fueled by decisions made by humans. So, and also in terms of in terms of sort of making sure that we're not using other people's content. This approach and others like it allow us to control the quality and the inputs themselves, so that it's within the organisation's control. These are some of the sorts of learning outputs that we're able to generate, and you're able to generate, and some of these we're achieving much better results than others, and sometimes that's down to the human. So we've been able to generate some pretty bad ideas for a learning game if we ask generative AI to come up with an idea that doesn't really suit the content, for example. Whereas something like creating a video script, and all sorts of video scripts, not just presenter-led, but scenario-type video scripts, if we're getting it good prompts, we're getting back some pretty good results there. Whereas, funny enough, we're not getting such good results on drafting animation scripts. We're not getting bad results in terms of creating the narrative, but actually, it's not particular in our experience. And again, we've got a very august group here, so you may be achieving much better results, but it's not very good at creating coherent visual consistency, or applying a kind of a visual treatment or a visual metaphor to the content. But obviously people can still jump in and do that. So what we're sometimes finding is it can be very productive. Sometimes it can be productive but still needs finessing. Sometimes we're finding it doesn't work. And there's some very obvious reasons for that, one of which being the quality of the input. If you put poor quality input in, doesn't matter how clever the AI is, it can only work with what you give it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's so interesting, or even your example of creating assessment questions and then asking it to generate plausible distractors yields much better results, or sometimes we see, if we ask a question, it can infer a critique. A colleague said, I think yesterday, that they'd asked it to offer up a process and then said, what's this part of the process for? And then it said, the response was, oh yes, actually we're going to refine the process and remove that as a section of the process. It was kind of like seemed to be inferring a critique from the question. I also wondered if Jeff say something just about we talked about the reductionism, the ability to generate output, mark itself, assess itself as well.
Yeah, I mean, one of the exercises that I went through, which was to ask the AI to write. We had some banking legislation content that we were processing, and I asked it to set an essay question about the sort of strengths and weaknesses of different financial legislation in terms of reducing banking failure. As it was an example I used. And it came up with a really good question, and actually also came up with a really good rubric. And being somewhat familiar with that content, I was very happy with both. And I thought I'd just be interested to take it a little bit further. So I said, can you go and write the essay? So it went and wrote the essay. And then I said, can you mark your essay? And actually, it didn't give itself full marks. So I thought that was also quite interesting.
Jonathan's had some experience with that. I know we've got loads of questions, Jeff. I just want to check. I know we're relatively short on time, about 3/4 of our time.
Shall I just give one more example, which is related, and then we'll come back to some of the questions, and also just want to just share something. So, in a similar vein, one of the things that we sometimes find with our clients is they have very large curricula, and those curricula sometimes they've slightly lost touch with it. They're not sure that it's comprehensive enough, or that it contains a lot of duplication. And actually, when we're working with very large global clients, that's surprisingly common. So one of the other things that we're using large language models for is to do a meta-analysis of content. So in other words, sort of identify what's this course, who's it designed for, how long is it, what format is it, and what does it cover, and what skills does it support. So this is a sort of a process that we go through where we ingest content, can be all sorts of content, analyze that content, and normalize and clean the content in order to put it into a vectorized database so that we can interrogate it, so that we can do things like understand what learning objectives it supports, what skills it supports, that type of thing. And that can be really useful in practical applications like reducing waste. You know, we came across an organization that had 15 versions of a particular course, and as a human, you need to look at that and go, maybe there's a reason for that. But actually, you know, there was just a lot of duplication in there. And so you can reduce learner time waste and content waste, and possibly even paying multiple times for the same content. So this is sort of meta-analysis of the content.
Did you explain what a vector database is?
I didn't, but okay, so I need to explain it in my terms because I'm not a programmer. But the way I understand it is that what it does is it breaks the content down into discrete chunks that allows you to interrogate that in a way that's consistent. So it will take things, for example, from things like sort of video, MP4s or SCOs or whatever. I did see a question about diagrams and infographics, and the tool that we're using at the moment will take some information from that if you can get hold of it. But if you had a picture of me, for example, juggling balls, there are AI tools that might say, this looks like a person juggling balls. It may be a metaphor for multitasking. At the moment, the tool that we're using internally doesn't do that, but we're looking into how to include that. But I'll come on to some of the challenges we're facing on that in a minute.
Rebecca, Jeff's got a really nice example of that, so that is coming up. And now just a slightly more disruptive set of examples that we're working on, which is the use of AI to support coaching and mentoring. We are starting to see intelligent chatbots coming to the fore to tackle some specific use cases. So we've got a couple of examples. So we've got a team working with a client in the automotive industry who are basically codifying their product warranty information so that a chatbot can interrogate and answer questions for staff in the flow of work. We've also got one you can see bottom right. Some of these can be quite challenging to show for various reasons, but Tom Pies from our innovation team created a piece where we were running a live event at one of our customer forums, and what he did was set each team to work with an AI avatar to answer questions. So it was like really simple gameplay in a live environment where the attendees working as a team would communicate with those avatars to help them answer questions. So they were all, in fact, notable figures, historical characters. And I think it's a really nice example of demonstrating the value of performance support. And then finally, we had a team for our sister company, Preloaded, who have developed an avatar for a world-renowned entertainment company. And the brief here was to respond in character. So they were prototyping AI to serve as an engagement factor on the customer journey. And my point here is, while this sounds really futuristic, is that actually, all of this technology is here now. And in fact, the thing that I found most surprising about this piece of work is that the challenge wasn't actually in getting the AI avatar to generate an accurate response. It was actually in making it feel natural. So a little bit like what we were talking about earlier with the natural language and communication. So reducing the onset of response from 400 milliseconds to 200 milliseconds by starting analysis quicker, and also enabling the technology to not start responding when someone paused as they were asking a question. And then finally, I think there was one other interesting piece of feedback, which was the value of personalization. So actually using information that someone has shared in prompting and reflecting that back, which makes it feel, it shows that it's not canned responses and makes it feel like, the avatar really understands you. Just briefly, I know the applications of this, great potential for new starters to organisations, people who are in the throes of onboarding, or I don't know, for someone who has lots of questions for HR or a question about a company policy that will help guide their decision making in the moment. We're seeing lots of opportunity there, and there's a bunch of tools which you can employ. Avatars being a front end to a secure learning large language model like ChatGPT or Copilot, or there are some out of the box tools, and they can help you develop personas, create the avatars, develop scenarios and translate easily using chatbots. So we've listed some of those here.
I've been trying to answer a few questions as we've been going. This one here, was this the one we, I'm just trying to remember, was this the one we put up earlier? And I'm not sure whether it was or not. So yes, this came a little bit earlier in the session than I expected it to actually. So the other one that I thought we were going to cover earlier was just asking this group about how you're using AI, and I can see some of the answers to this, and how you're using AI in content design and creation. In
the interest of time, I might just suggest we jump into the next section and also take the opportunity to answer questions.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think
hard agree on that. We've got 10 minutes left, guys.
No, it's you're absolutely fine. I think we'll be fine. I think we'll be fine, but I do want to leave time for questions. So some of the things that have been coming up in the questions and in the chat is around policy and principles of using AI in a professional corporate environment. And so we have a set of guiding principles for the use of AI, and this is how we, as an organisation, we say we need to engage with clients on this basis, and normally that's appreciated by them. So, we want to maintain the privacy and security of their content. We want to make sure it's not polluted by other content from other people on the internet. Doesn't mean we can't look at it for inspiration, but we want to make sure that it's it's highest quality. We want to make sure that we are paying attention to things like diversity and equity and inclusion and AI. There's many studies that have been shown that large language models and particularly image libraries can be they contain a lot of bias, and so you need to be aware of that. So we need to be able to identify the sources and identify where things are coming from, and make sure that there's equitability in what we're doing, and that's something we're finding is resonating with our clients. And we're also think it's important that we're building that into our processes and tools. And this is where I just wanted to briefly talk about sort of boundaries theft, what I've called boundaries theft, hallucinations, entropy, security, and other ways to get into trouble. And there's a classic example. Napster back in the day provided a peer-to-peer network where people could share music, and people shared music that wasn't there. And even though they were the sort of the facilitator of that, Napster got into trouble. They got into legal difficulties. They're still there as a brand. They were picked up by somebody else, but they kind of lost the position to things like Apple Music and Spotify. And we don't want our clients to face similar challenges. And Ella talked about an example of where people were sharing information, and tools like facial recognition might sort of help with proctoring in exams.
I think I just want to say, I think Daniel had a question about the EU AI Act, and I think this is the thing, is that we are going to see more regulation coming in future, I expect. And I think there's a couple of other areas just around guidelines. So sustainability, we know, is becoming more of a concern. Google and Microsoft have seen, I think, their emissions increase significantly, which is causing some challenges, I think, for their net zero carbon emissions goals. And the reality is querying uses quite a lot of electricity. So I think that's one area where we're going to start to see more concerns emerging, as well as really, in alongside security and the kind of need for oversight.
And image creation for us feels like, sorry, I didn't mean to just sort of ignore that point. I thought you'd made it, Ella, so I'm just going to move on to another point. Image creation for us is an interesting one. So the image that you can see on the left-hand side of the screen at the moment is an AI image that I generated using my laptop camera. So I took a picture of myself, sat at the computer wearing a white t-shirt, and it's already starting to do some strange things. So first of all, it's lying because I'm fatter than that character in real life. And secondly, I had a jacket on the back of the door behind me, and I asked it to generate a picture for me of this character walking a tightrope, which it's doing, but it's also got series of clothes racks in the background because it's taking something from that image and doing something strange with it. And then the other thing is it's obviously got to have got that skyline from somewhere, and I don't know where. So image generation is an interesting problematic area, I feel, at the moment. And I was also able to do a much more scurrilous image. So I asked it to generate an image of Homer Simpson flying a particular brand of helicopter, and it did that very nicely, and that wouldn't have been appreciated by Fox or whoever owns the Simpsons. It wouldn't have been appreciated by the owner of the helicopter, and it wouldn't necessarily have had any relationship to the brand values of either of those products. This is one other example of why I find this also intriguing and at the same time worrying. So those of you that know how to wire UK plugs will know, from looking at it, that this plug is incorrectly wired. The blue wire, the neutral wire, is going to the live connector, and the brown wire, the live wire, is going to the neutral connector, and the earth is in the right place. But when I asked both Copilot and ChatGPT to analyze this image, it confidently told me where the brown wire should go, it confidently told me where the blue wire should go, and it confidently told me where the green wire should go correctly, and also that you should secure the wires safely and that kind of thing. And it equally confidently told me that this plug was correctly wired. So, which only substantiates my view that the robots are out to get us, either through electrocution or fire or through blowing up our competing electronic devices. And this was only done a week ago, by the way. This isn't an old image. This is a very recent image. Now, you could also argue that I could have written it and asked it a better prompt. Anyway, this was just some of the challenges we're facing around imagery. And to come back to the question about whether we've got image analysis within our tool at the moment, no, we don't. And this is another area where we are working on it, and that human intervention we see as being exceptionally important just right now. So we have a view that the human should be involved in the loop in determining the inputs, determining the outputs, reviewing the outputs, and controlling the process. And we certainly see that being a requirement for quite a long time to come. But we're also delighted and excited about the productivity and the creativity opportunities it's giving us as well. So in terms of the way ahead, I talked at the very start of the session about myself, and many of you have gone through many waves of technology, but I particularly like this quote from Douglas Adams that you may be familiar with, which is that anything that's in the world when you're born is normal and ordinary and just a natural part of the way it works. So there'll be loads of people going through university at the moment, coming into the workforce, where AI is just there, and they will use it. And actually, those of them that are already in the workforce, that are in the right age band, according to Douglas Adams, will get a career in it, and will be developing large language models and effective prompt engineering, and doing more and more exciting things with data analytics and applying it to many new areas. And then the other thing, and this is something that I rail against, is that anything after 35 is against the natural order of things, and I'm trying to make sure that that's not me, and that I'm embracing AI. And actually, of course, it's something you can't put back in the box. And it's about a matter of making sure that it's used for human benefit, human endeavour, and under human control. Just in the last few minutes, and then I'll come back to the questions, there's a few things on here that I found really, really useful, particularly in using generative AI. Know what you're working with, know your sources, don't put rubbish in because you'll definitely get rubbish out. Make sure that you're not sharing intellectual property, product knowledge, new vehicle launches, anything that is of competitive advantage inadvertently with other people, because large language models are very hungry for knowledge. Understand how the AI is processing your data. I found it's not very good with highly interrelated topics like, for example, tax, where you're doing tax calculations, where there's so many dependencies that when the AI breaks that down, it's not necessarily very good at reassembling it. And that comes back to another point that, if you're going to do something and you suggest to your project manager, your head of learning, or CEO, or a client that you're going to be able to do something, I've had some really delightful responses and a couple of significant disappointments. So I'd always say test before you suggest. Refine your prompts, and the other thing is obviously AI also learns from the prompts you're giving it. So it will start to build your prompts sometimes into your answers. So another suggestion is you don't go too far down the rabbit hole. So those are some of my tips, and that just gives us a couple of minutes to sort of pick up on some questions. So sorry for speaking.
One of the questions that I've seen from Edwin was about, is this going to help us become better at knowledge management? I wondered if you could say something about that, because I think, the challenge right now is that it still feels like it needs to be very much mediated by human intervention. So what are your views on whether it will make us better at knowledge management?
I'm finding ways in which it's increasing productivity around knowledge management. So, for example, the interrogation of content to extract metadata, or the interrogation of content to extract meaning. If you're looking through 5,000 courses and you just want a sort of a paragraph summary of each course and the audience it's designed for, that kind of processing can be really effective and help you regain some control of some knowledge management things. But it depends what you're looking at, of course. So that's just a reflection from me.
Yeah. I know we also had a question from someone about support available and the challenge of kind of using new tools and implementing them back into practice. So I was just going to say, hopefully there have been some useful or pearls of wisdom here that will help you kind of put things back into practice. But we've also developed a number of courses, and so if you need more formal support, this is a shameless plug for something that's coming up, which we can let you know about. So we have a Human Plus AI, so a practical course for learning leaders. I've been on it, and let me tell you, it is amazing to have a supported environment in which you can use AI tools and apply them in your work. And we've even been experimenting with a new promptathon activity this week, which is really exciting and getting great feedback. So I totally appreciate, I can't remember who it was who asked the question, but I think that, it's sharing, and I think these kinds of sessions, understanding what people are doing, where it's not working as much as where it really is working, because sometimes, what works in one context doesn't always work in another as well. So it's actually really by sharing that I think that we can really start progressing at pace.
And Fran, I'm with you,
Stuff.
by the way, in the comments, totally.
We are out of time. I would love to go 3 more questions. I've got some brilliant questions. Natalia's one about examples of data analytics. I'd love to look at Kaori's about internal learning and LLM and chatbot. We just haven't got the time to go through them. There is a question I can answer, which is Rolf, which is the Deccan recording available post-session. So the recording, definitely. You'll be able to pick the recording up. It will be available from tomorrow. If you scroll down on the left-hand side, you'll see the recording of the event, and a list of future webinars is on the LT webinar page. What we've also got on the page there is links to all of some of the other things which have come up in conversation. So we've got the Human and AI ebook, AI Reshaping training, podcast on the complexities of leadership and AI, and there's also the landing page if you want to sign up for the GP Strategies newsletter, and also that Practical Learning Leaders program sign up as well.
And thanks for having us, Andrew.
I wish we had more time to answer questions, but I'll say, do feel free to get in touch with us. We'll also take some of these questions away, and I think it'd be lovely to do a blog post or something, Jeff, where we can see, where people are taking this, what we've learned from this session in terms of everything that you've shared too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Thank you for joining.
Sorry about that. My crashed terrible.
Oh, we lose you.
Had some,
All right, you're back.
sorry about. Yeah, my internet connection crashed. Sorry about that. Yeah, I asked the question: are people able to email? Just get the slide deck from you. That was the only thing.
Absolutely. So yeah, you can find us on
Brilliant
LinkedIn, email.
Excellent. Brilliant. Yeah, apologies for just disappearing like that. My internet literally just crashed. It happened once during the session as well. You'd never have known it, but there we go. Thank you, everybody. Massive thank you, Jeff. Massive thank you, Ella. Really outstanding session. You can see the thank yous in the chat. So thank you, everybody. Thank you for your chat as well, because it's the combination of stuff that keeps these sessions so good. So appreciate everybody. I'm going to put you all back into the lobby now. On hold, but really, really great session, and we'll see you all again soon. Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Learning Technologies, for hosting us.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah.